Okay, you are back. And if you were with us for our last deep dive, you know that feeling we were chasing. That moment of spotting where your money is actually going, finding that hidden cash flow you didn't even realize you had. Chances are you've had a taste of that feeling now. Maybe you've tracked your spending, identified some areas you can trim, and suddenly the numbers aren't quite so scary. You've found some financial breathing room. You probably resonate with Zara, who looked hard at her subscriptions and food delivery and found real money there. Or Raj, who tackled the budget with Sarah and discovered they could free up a significant chunk, something like 18% of their spending, just by being intentional. Or maybe Linda, feeling a sense of control returning after years of financial pressure. Even Gerry, in his own unique way, found savings by rethinking some long held habits. There's a lightness, a quiet victory in finding that freed up cash, just like the energy building with the group at the Mapleview Café.
That feeling of finding cash flow is absolutely foundational. It shifts you from feeling passive about your finances, like money just happens to you, to feeling active, like you are the one making decisions and steering the course.
Mhm.
It's tangible proof that small changes or even just awareness can create immediate positive impact.
Right.
And that tangible progress is incredibly motivating. It builds a desire to keep going, to tackle the next challenge.
Precisely. You've built momentum. You've armed yourself with financial ammunition, real dollars that are now available for you to deploy strategically. And with that momentum, it's natural to start looking ahead, right? To start dreaming a little about what you can do with this money, investing, saving for big goals, seeing your wealth grow. Maybe even picturing yourself Scrooge McDucking into a giant vault of gold coins.
A powerful visual and a perfectly valid long-term aspiration. That's where we all want to get, eventually building significant wealth, achieving financial freedom.
But before we can realistically leap into that gold coin pool, before we even focus heavily on strategies like investing for growth, there's something we absolutely must confront. An obstacle that, if ignored, will significantly slow down, if not outright prevent, any serious progress towards true financial freedom. We are talking about debt. Think of that freed up cash flow as putting gas in the tank, but debt is like trying to drive with the parking brake on. Or even worse, like trying to run a marathon with a refrigerator strapped to your back.
That refrigerator analogy from the source material is perfect. It doesn't matter how fit you are, how much potential speed you have, or how clear the path ahead seems. That immense constant weight is going to exhaust you, make every step harder, slow you down dramatically, and make the finish line feel impossibly distant. Debt is that constant heavy burden on your financial journey.
And that powerful image of debt as a refrigerator is exactly where our deep dive takes us today. We are plunging into Chapter 2 of The Myth of Good Debt, and the title of this chapter pulls absolutely no punches. It states clearly, there's no such thing as good debt, only better dressed liabilities. Now, that challenges a fundamental idea that is widespread in our society, doesn't it?
It absolutely flies in the face of conventional wisdom, which has trained us to distinguish between different types of debt. We're constantly told that some debt is not just acceptable, but even advantageous, a tool for building wealth or accessing opportunities.
Yeah.
Mortgages, student loans for education, maybe a low-interest car loan. These are typically presented as examples of good debt.
Hmm.
They're portrayed as responsible, sophisticated. They wear the fancy suit, carry a briefcase. Perhaps they sip espresso while discussing amortization schedules. They're investments in your future, the narrative goes.
Right, that's the widely accepted story, like Zara's student loan. It was pitched to her as an investment in her future, enabling her career, complete with glossy brochures and hopeful promises of opportunity. It felt like a necessary, even positive step.
And on the other side, you have what is almost universally condemned as bad debt. High-interest credit card balances, payday loans, title loans. These are the clear villains in the public imagination.
Yeah, those are easy to point fingers at.
Totally. They're seen as predatory, irresponsible. They're depicted as lurking in dark alleys, wearing stained sweatpants and a mullet, definitely offering questionable financial advice at exorbitant prices. They are the obvious drains on your finances.
But the core, powerful, and somewhat radical argument presented in this chapter, straight from Jordan, is that this common distinction is largely artificial. It's a myth. Whether it's a mortgage on a potentially appreciating asset or a high-interest credit card used for impulsive purchases, all debt shares a fundamental characteristic. It is an obligation.
Exactly. It's a legally binding promise to pay someone back, almost always with interest. And crucially, that payment has to come from somewhere.
From your future paychecks.
It has to come from your future income. And that's the critical reframing the source insists upon. A true financial asset, as defined in wealth-building terms, is something that puts money into your pocket, like rental income from a property, dividends from investments, or profits from a business. A liability is anything that takes money out of your pocket. Debt, by its very definition, takes money out of your pocket in the form of principal and interest payments.
Okay.
Therefore, regardless of what you use the borrowed money for, the debt itself is a liability.
So even that mortgage on your house, which could appreciate in value, you're saying it's still a liability because you have those monthly payments draining your cash flow.
Exactly. The house itself might be an asset, or at least have asset potential, but the mortgage is unequivocally a liability. It is a claim on your future earnings month after month, year after year, for potentially decades. It consumes cash flow that could otherwise be used for investment, saving, or other financial goals. Some liabilities, like that mortgage, might be associated with something that could grow in value or provide shelter, which makes them look better dressed than a credit card balance.
Right, the fancy suit analogy.
Yeah, but they're still liabilities. They are still draining resources. They are still that refrigerator on your back that just wear a slightly fancier suit while doing it.
It makes you think about how different generations viewed debt. Raj mentioned his parents had a really strict rule. Never borrow, pay cash.
That rule is a powerful reflection of a different financial era and a mindset forged through specific experiences. Raj's parents came to Canada with very little. Their journey involved immense hard work, saving diligently and delaying gratification for years to achieve financial security. That background instills a profound understanding of the true value of earned money and the high cost, both explicit, interest, and implicit, the loss of freedom of borrowing. For them, the discipline was simple and absolute. If you didn't have the cash for something, you simply didn't buy it. Full stop. That kind of deeply ingrained discipline is a stark contrast to the environment most of us grew up in, where credit is readily available, easily accessible, and often actively encouraged as a way to live now and pay later.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Our society normalizes debt as a tool, sometimes even a necessity, right from our student years.
Which brings us to the real-world examples shared by the group in the source material. They really bring this concept of liabilities, better dressed or otherwise, to life, showing how debt impacts everyday people and their finances.
These stories are incredibly important because they move beyond abstract concepts and show the tangible, often painful consequences of different types of debt. They highlight how easily debt can become intertwined with our emotions, desires, and daily lives.
Let's dive into a few of these, starting with Raj and those Oilers playoff tickets. Talk about emotional spending.
A perfect example. The scenario painted is vivid. The excitement, the desire to be part of the community, and the playoff energy, sharing that moment with his son. It felt like a must-do experience. The source mentions the cost something like $800 for decent seats, plus the added expense of jerseys and arena food, which, as anyone who's been knows, isn't cheap. It quickly adds up.
And how did he pay for this peak emotional experience, putting it on Visa, the mechanism for instant gratification?
Exactly. The immediate financial pain of parting with cash is completely bypassed. The debit card stays in the wallet, the credit card comes out, and suddenly an $800 plus experience feels effortless in the moment. But, as the source emphasizes, this ease comes at a significant cost. Raj was still paying for that specific game, that moment, that hat trick, that glorious overtime winner plus interest, long after the final buzzer had sounded and the jerseys were relegated to the back of the closet.
Ouch.
Yeah, the fleeting high of the experience dissipates, but the financial obligation, fueled by compound interest, lingers. Jordan's phrase, compound interest, sticks around like a devoted fan after a particularly brutal losing streak, perfectly captures that feeling of the cost outlasting the benefit.
It's the interest rate ambush you mentioned earlier. The real cost isn't just the principal, it's the interest compounding over time. And the personal impact on Raj went beyond the money. He was hiding it from his wife, Zara, and his dad.
That's such a crucial, often overlooked aspect of debt. It's not purely financial. The act of taking on debt, especially for discretionary spending, and then having to conceal it, adds layers of emotional burden. The guilt, the anxiety of potentially being discovered, the strain on relationships caused by financial secrets. The source suggests this guilt was almost as bad as paying the interest.
Wow.
That highlights how debt isn't just numbers on a statement, it's a psychological weight.
And that pattern, where a temporary pleasure results in long-term payments far exceeding the initial cost, isn't unique. The source mentions a client who put a once-in-a-lifetime cruise on her credit card and 5 years later was still paying off the debt, and at that point her payments were barely covering just the cost of the drinks package she'd added on board.
That story is sobering. A wonderful, luxurious vacation, a week or two of indulgence and relaxation, transformed into a half-decade financial obligation. The memories might be nice, but paying for watered-down cocktails and sodas 5 years after you drank them at an inflated price thanks to compound interest is a powerful illustration of how debt can trap your future income in the past. The
Hmm.
fun is gone, the value consumed, but the payments continue their relentless draft from your bank account. It dramatically underscores the idea that what feels like a single purchase can easily morph into years of financial drag.
Now let's talk about student loans. These are widely presented as the epitome of good debt and investment in human capital. But Zara's experience, as recounted in the source, certainly challenges that narrative.
It absolutely does. Zara, like so many students, bought into the dominant message that student loans were a necessary and beneficial investment in her future earning potential. The glossy brochures, the career guidance, the societal expectation, and it all reinforced the idea that this was smart borrowing. And while education is invaluable, the debt taken on to acquire it is still a liability, and often a massive one.
And the reality for Zara was the sheer size of that debt load once she finished school.
Precisely. The excitement of graduating and starting a career quickly collides with the reality of repayment schedules and interest accrual. Zara described it feeling like trying to dig her way out of a deep hole using only a teaspoon, while someone named Compound Interest, equipped with a backhoe, was cheerfully and efficiently refilling the hole faster than she could dig.
The analogy really captures the struggle. You're making payments, doing what you're supposed to do, but the balance seems to barely budge, especially early on, because so much of each payment is eaten up by interest.
It's incredibly frustrating and demotivating. It highlights that even debt taken on for a seemingly productive purpose, like education, represents a significant claim on your future income. It's a burden that can weigh you down for years, impacting your ability to save, invest, or even pursue other life goals. It underscores the source's argument that even conventionally good debt is, at its core, a substantial liability and a heavy anchor.
Speaking of things that seem easy in the moment but create problems later, Zara also had a classic experience with buy now, pay later, or BNPL.
BNPL. It's a really interesting and increasingly common example of a better-dressed liability. It's masterfully marketed as convenience, as just a different way to pay rather than as a form of borrowing. Zara's story perfectly illustrates the trap. She sees a $400 trench coat, and the offer is presented as 4 easy payments of $100. That sounds so much more manageable than $400 all at once, right?
Definitely. Very tempting.
So she goes for it. Then she sees some booths and thinks, okay, I can do another 4 easy payments of $6, then a laptop bag.
And suddenly, she's not tracking one payment, but 5 different easy payment plans from different BNPL providers, all drafting from her account on different dates throughout the month.
That's the core of the BNPL trap. Each individual transaction feels small and painless because the total cost is broken down. But the cumulative effect of multiple simultaneous plans is a significant, often complex drain on your monthly cash flow. It makes budgeting a nightmare because you have all these small amounts hitting your account at irregular intervals.
And what happens if you mix up a date or your account is short on cash one day?
That's where the hidden costs kick in. The source highlights that missed payments often trigger immediate interest charges, sometimes backdated to the purchase date, plus late fees. In Zara's case, that $400 coat ended up costing closer to $500 because she missed a payment deadline. That extra $100 wasn't for better quality or a longer-lasting coat. It was purely the punitive cost of borrowing, incurred because the system designed to feel easy became complicated and unforgiving the moment she faltered.
Jordan's analogies for BNPL are pretty pointed. Buy now, panic later. Borrowing nonchalantly, problems looming.
They capture the psychological reality. BNPL is designed to lower your inhibition to spend money you don't currently possess. It makes a $400 purchase feel like a $100 decision. It exploits the psychological bias towards present gratification over future consequences. Jordan also called it financial junk food.
Financial junk food, how so?
Yes, it tastes good in the moment you get the item immediately without the full financial hit. It provides that instant dopamine rush. But there's zero long-term financial benefit, no nutritional value. You're left with the equivalent of a sugar crash regret, potentially fees and interest, and a lighter wallet for longer than you expected. And the cumulative effect, the death by 1,000 paper cuts analogy, is apt too. Each individual payment is small, like a paper cut, But having numerous paper cuts all over your your finances can be incredibly painful and debilitating. It's the cumulative effect of multiple small, easy-seeming obligations that creates a significant problem.
Moving from personal spending and convenience debt to business realities, Linda's story about her business debt adds another layer to the discussion of liabilities.
Linda's situation provides a crucial perspective because her reason for taking on debt was fundamentally different. It wasn't for discretionary spending or personal wants. It was taken on to preserve her business and, critically, to keep her employees on staff during a challenging economic downturn.
Which sounds like a responsible reason, right?
That's a commendable motivation. She used a business line of credit, which, again, in many contexts, might be seen as a better-dressed form of debt, a tool for managing business operations.
But even this necessary, well-intentioned debt became a significant burden. The source notes the interest rate started low, but then crept up silently, like a vine.
That's a common feature of variable rate debt, whether personal or business. Interest rates can fluctuate, and even small, gradual increases can significantly impact your monthly payments and the total cost of the debt over time. For Linda, this business debt wasn't in isolation. She was also managing the mortgage on her home on her own after a divorce, plus all her child's expenses. The combination created immense financial pressure.
She described months where her payments were going only towards interest, barely touching the principal. That must feel awful.
That feeling of being stuck in quicksand is a devastating consequence of debt, particularly when rates rise or cash flow tightens. You're making substantial payments, doing everything you're required to do, fulfilling your obligations, but the total amount you owe isn't decreasing. It feels like you're running on a treadmill that's constantly accelerating away from you. It's financially frustrating and incredibly demoralizing.
And Linda's story really underscores the non-financial cost of debt. She talked about the unbelievable stress affecting her health and sleep, a constant weight on my chest.
This is perhaps the most critical point we can take from Linda's experience, and it applies to all debt, regardless of how well-dressed it is. Debt isn't just a line item on a balance sheet. It's a profound emotional and psychological burden. The chronic stress, the worry, the lost sleep, the feeling of being trapped. These non-monetary costs are immense and can negatively impact physical health, mental well-being, relationships, productivity, and overall quality of life.
Yeah.
When we assess the true cost of debt, we must include these significant human costs.
Finally, we have Gerry's legendary and cautionary tale of Thunderhoof.
Ah, Gerry and Thunderhoof.
It's God.
This is a perfect, albeit perhaps slightly exaggerated example of speculative or, frankly, foolish debt. Gerry, swept up in the excitement of the Calgary Stampede, a time known for its potent mix of rodeo fever, entrepreneurial spirit, and maybe a little too much optimism, heard about this magnificent bull, a champion bloodline, hyped as a future stud who would generate easy money.
And Gerry, perhaps feeling the rodeo impresario spirit himself, took out a hefty loan based purely on that hype.
Precisely. He borrowed a large sum of money based on the potential future earnings of an asset that was inherently risky. He believed the auctioneer's exciting narrative about championship lineage and future dynasties over a sober, realistic assessment of the actual risk involved in livestock, especially for breeding purposes.
Okay, so what happened?
The reality, as Gerry discovered, was that Thunderhoof, despite his impressive physique, had what Gerry charmingly called performance anxiety.
Oh, no.
The bull was, shall we say, more interested in the simple pleasures of napping and eating clover than in fulfilling his lucrative stud duties.
He was Thunderpoof instead of Thunderhoof when it came to generating income.
A perfect description. All the show, none of the necessary go when it came to being a profitable asset. But in stark contrast to the bull's leisurely pace, the loan payments Gerry took out, they were very much go, go, go.
Always are.
Relentless, demanding, coming due like clockwork, regardless of Thunderhoof's performance.
This highlights the danger of speculative debt, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Borrowing for something based on the hope of a quick or easy profit, especially if that profit is uncertain or relies on external factors you can't control.
Absolutely. It's a vivid lesson in the difference between an asset that might generate future income, and might not, and a liability that definitely requires payments from your current or future income. Some assets, particularly speculative ones that don't produce income or are subject to significant market swings, or in this case animal whims, can very quickly turn into liabilities demanding payments while providing no return.
Right.
Gerry's story is a memorable illustration of how a speculative venture funded by debt can become a liability in a very expensive and ultimately lazy cowboy hat. The consequence for Gerry was years of paying off that loan, years during which that money was tied up servicing debt, rather than being available for stable, productive investment or other uses.
So after hearing these stories, from emotional spending to speculative ventures, from seemingly necessary education costs to business challenges, the source's argument becomes clearer. Debt takes many forms, often disguised or rationalized, but it is always an obligation, a claim on your future self and your future earnings. It's that refrigerator strapped to your back.
And the absolutely essential first step to even begin thinking about removing that refrigerator, about tackling this debt beast, is you have to see it clearly. You have to drag every shadowy corner of it into the bright light.
Okay.
You need to create your debt inventory.
Okay, debt inventory. That sounds official. Maybe a little intimidating, like compiling a financial rogues gallery.
Yeah, it can certainly feel that way. For some, it might feel like a personal wall of shame, but it's a non-negotiable step. You cannot develop a strategy to eliminate debt if you don't know exactly who and what you owe, and crucially, the terms of those obligations. The task is simple, but it requires diligence and honesty. List every single debt you have.
Every debt, no exception, like really everything.
No exceptions. The source is clear. This includes credit cards. Even if you intend to pay them off, list the current balance.
Okay.
Lines of credit, personal or business. Student loans, federal, provincial, private.
Yeah.
Car loans or leases. Any personal loans from banks or other institutions. Buy now, pay later plans, yes. List each individual plan.
Each one. Wow.
Yes. And even money owed to friends or family. Yes, that Cousin Vinny's garage loan needs to be on there too.
Okay, list every single debt. What specific information do I need for each one?
The source specifies 4 critical data points for each debt. First, the debt name. This is just for easy identification. Is it your Visa, your Demo student loan, your Scotiabank line of credit, the BNPL for the boots?
Got it.
Second, the total balance owed. This is the current outstanding amount. This is the size of the hole you are currently in for that specific debt. It's crucial to know the magnitude of each challenge.
Okay, total balance.
Third, the minimum month flow payment. This is the baseline amount you must pay each month to avoid penalties and keep the account in good standing. This is your non-negotiable outgoing cash flow requirement just to service the debt.
Minimum payment, right.
And fourth, and according to the source, arguably the most important number on the entire list, the interest rate.
The interest rate, the vampire feasting on your future wealth.
Exactly. This is knowing the enemy's name and its appetite. The interest rate is the cost of borrowing that money, expressed as a percentage of the outstanding balance. This percentage dictates how quickly the amount you owe grows if you're only making minimum payments or missing payments. And conversely, how much of your actual payment goes towards reducing the principal versus how much just disappears into interest charges. A high interest rate means a huge chunk of your payment goes straight to the lender as their profit, barely making a dent in the total amount you owe. This is why knowing the rate is so vital. It tells you which debts are costing you the most and which are the most urgent to eliminate from a purely financial perspective. So this comprehensive list with these 4 data points for every single debt is the debt inventory. It's about getting just facts, no shame, no blame. Precisely. The purpose isn't to judge yourself or feel overwhelmed, though those feelings might surface. The purpose is clarity. It's about creating a clear, objective picture of your current financial reality when it comes to debt. You can't strategically tackle a problem until you fully understand its dimensions and characteristics. This list gives you the necessary intelligence to formulate a plan. You can't fight a battle effectively if you don't know exactly how many opponents you have, their strength, which is the balance, their demands, the minimum payment, and their primary weapon, the interest rate. Okay, so you've done the difficult work, you've compiled the list, you've faced the financial rogues gallery. What comes after this potentially sobering step? Do you just sit and stare at the list? Tempting, perhaps, but no. We need to shift from assessment to action. Once you have that detailed inventory in front of you, it's time to develop your debt attack strategy. The source presents 2 main methods for tackling debt repayment, describing them like 2 different rodeo riding styles, each with its own approach and benefits. Okay, let's hear them. The first is the snowball method. Yes, the snowball method. With this approach, you arrange your debts on your inventory list based on their total balance, from the smallest amount owed to the largest amount owed, regardless of the interest rate. Smallest balance first. Got it. The strategy is to make only the minimum payments on all of your debts, except for the debt with the very smallest balance. You then take all that freed up cash flow we talked about finding in the last deep dive, that 10-22% you've identified, and you throw all of it at that smallest debt, attacking it as aggressively as possible.
And the snowball effect, where does that come in?
Once that smallest debt is completely paid off, zeroed out, you take the money you were previously dedicating to it, both the original minimum payment and the extra amount you were throwing at it, and you add that total amount to the minimum payment of the next smallest debt on your list.
Ah, I see.
You continue making minimum payments on all other debts, but now you're aggressively attacking the next one. As you pay off each subsequent debt, the total amount you roll forward into the next debt payment gets larger and larger, gathering momentum like a snowball rolling downhill, picking up snow.
And the primary benefit of the snowball method, why do it this way?
The main benefit is psychological momentum. Getting rid of those smaller debts quickly gives you rapid wins. You see debts disappearing from your list relatively fast, which is incredibly motivating. It provides that feeling of accomplishment, that first 8-second ride in the rodeo. It makes you feel like you're making progress and encourages you to stick with the plan long term. It's about building confidence and adherence through visible results. Okay, makes sense. Quick wins feel good. Now, the second method is the avalanche method. How does that work?
The avalanche method takes a different approach, focused purely on the numbers. With this method, you arrange your debts based on their interest rate, from the highest interest rate down to the lowest interest rate.
Highest interest rate first this time.
Correct. The action is similar to the snowball in that you make the minimum payments on all debts except for the debt with the highest interest rate. You then take all your available extra cash, all that freed up cash flow, and aggressively attack that debt with the highest interest rate.
What happens when that highest rate debt is gone?
Once the highest rate debt is paid off, you take the total amount you were paying on it, the minimum payment plus the extra payment, and add it to the minimum payment of the debt with the next highest interest rate on your list. You continue this process, always directing all extra payments towards the debt with the current highest interest rate remaining.
And the benefit of the avalanche method. Why choose this one? This method saves you the most money on interest over the long term. By targeting the debt that is costing you the most, the one where compound interest has the biggest appetite, you reduce the total amount of interest paid over the entire duration of your debt repayment journey. It is mathematically the most efficient approach to becoming debt-free with the lowest total cost.
So if snowball is about psychological wins and momentum, avalanche is about mathematical efficiency and saving money on interest. The fast win versus the smart win, maybe.
Exactly. The snowball prioritizes quick wins for motivation. The avalanche prioritizes minimizing the total cost of debt. The avalanche is often preferred by those who are very focused on the numbers, who truly hate the idea of paying a single extra dollar in interest. They are the cold, hard numbers people, you could say.
So faced with these two strategies, how does someone choose? It sounds like avalanche is technically better financially.
Well, the source makes a crucial practical point here. While the avalanche method is mathematically superior for saving money, the best method is the one you will actually stick with.
Ah, that's key.
Absolutely. Both methods, applied diligently and aggressively, will get you out of debt. The risk with avalanche is that it might take a long time to pay off that first high-interest debt if it also has a large balance, and you might get discouraged and give up. The snowball provides those smaller, faster victories that keep motivation high.
A hybrid approach is also mentioned as a possibility. Mix and match.
Yes. For example, you might have one very small balance debt, like a BNPL plan maybe. You could pay that off first, using the snowball concept, just for the immediate win and psychological boost, and then switch to the avalanche method to target your credit card with the highest interest rate. The key, regardless of which method you choose or if you blend them, is consistency and aggression. Take that newfound saving, that 10-22% of your spending you found in the last deep dive, and aim it like a laser or a high-pressure water hose at your chosen priority debt.
Don't just let it disappear.
Exactly. Don't let that extra money just sit in your checking account or get absorbed into general spending. Direct it purposefully and consistently towards eliminating that debt. That focused attack is what makes the strategy effective.
All right, we've identified the debt, listed it out, and started thinking about how to attack it. But there's another crucial element tied to debt that we need to understand: your credit score. Linda mentioned feeling like hers took a beating during her financial challenges.
Right. The credit score can feel like this mysterious, powerful number, almost like your financial fate is sealed by it. But it's really just a summary of your past financial behavior related to borrowing. Think of it as your financial report card, or more practically, your reputation with lenders. Lenders use this three-digit number to assess the risk of lending you money.
Higher score, lower risk. Lower score, higher risk.
Precisely. A higher score indicates lower risk, meaning you're more likely to qualify for loans and, critically, you're likely to receive better terms and lower interest rates. A lower score signals higher risk, making it harder to borrow and much more expensive if you can.
And it's not just for getting a mortgage or a car loan, right? Its impact is broader.
Much broader. While it's essential for major borrowing like mortgages, your credit score can also influence whether you're approved for rental applications, the rates you pay for insurance, both car and home.
Insurance too.
Yes, whether you need to pay a deposit for utilities or cell phone service, and yes, in some cases, even potentially impact job applications, particularly for positions involving financial responsibility. The source says it's essential for adulting in any way, and that's not an exaggeration. A good credit score opens doors and saves you money. A poor one can create obstacles and cost you significantly.
The source material breaks down the key factors that make up your credit score, giving them different weights. What are these components? How does it actually work?
Understanding these factors is key to understanding your score and how to improve it. The most significant factor, making up a substantial 35% of your score, is payment history.
35%. That's huge.
It is. This is the single most important thing. It tracks whether you pay your bills on time, every single time. Late payments, missed payments, defaults, these have a very negative impact. Consistent, on-time payments are paramount. The source uses a great analogy. Be as reliable as Gerry's love for John Wayne. Payment history is the foundation of your credit reputation.
Okay, pay bills on time. What's next?
Next in waiting is amounts owed, often referred to as credit utilization, accounting for 30%, another big chunk.
Okay, what's that?
This factor looks at how much of your available credit you are currently using, specifically on revolving accounts like credit cards and lines of credit. If you have a credit card with a $10,000 credit limit and you have a $9,000 balance on it, your utilization ratio is 90%. $9,000 divided by $10,000. Lenders see high utilization as a sign of potential financial distress or reliance on credit, which is higher risk.
So you don't want to be maxing out your cards?
Definitely not. The generally accepted rule of thumb to maintain a healthy score is to keep your credit utilization below 30% on each card, and ideally even lower across all your revolving credit. Maxed out cards are a major red flag the size of Texas to lenders and significantly harm your score.
All right, 35% payment history, 30% utilization. What else?
Then we have length of credit history, contributing 15%. This factor considers how long your credit accounts have been open and how long they've been active. A longer history of responsible credit usage is generally positive because it provides lenders with more data about your reliability over time. This is why the source advises that if you have an older credit card with no annual fee, it can be beneficial to keep it open, even if you don't use it frequently, because that length of history is valuable for your score.
Don't just cut up old cards then.
Not necessarily, especially if they don't cost you anything to keep open. That history helps.
Okay, what's next?
Credit mix makes up 10%. This factor looks at the different types of credit you have and manage responsibly. Having a mix might include revolving credit, like credit cards or lines of credit, and installment loans, like a car loan or a mortgage, where you have fixed payments over a set term. Successfully managing different types of credit can show lenders that you are capable of handling various financial obligations. However, the source includes a crucial caution. But don't take out loans just for this.
Right, don't borrow just to look good.
Exactly. You should never incur debt you don't need purely to improve your credit mix factor. The cost of the debt will far outweigh any minor benefit to this score component.
And the last 10%.
Finally, new credit, also 10%. This component considers how recently you've opened new credit accounts or applied for credit. When you apply for credit, a hard inquiry is usually made on your credit report, which can slightly lower your score temporarily. Opening multiple new accounts or having many inquiries in a short period can signal to lenders that you might be desperate for credit or taking on too much debt too quickly, which is seen as higher risk.
So breaking it down, it seems the most impactful things are paying on time and keeping your balances low on credit cards and lines of credit. That's 65% right there.
Absolutely. Payment history and credit utilization together account for almost 2/3 of your score. If you focus on those two things, you'll have the biggest impact on your score. The simple credit score hacks from the source summarize this. 1. Pay your bills on time, every single time, consistently. 2. Keep your revolving credit balances low, ideally below 30% of your limit on each card. 3. Don't apply for credit you don't actually need. And 4, check your credit report annually.
Why is checking your report so important? What are you looking for?
You can get free copies from major credit bureaus like Equifax and TransUnion in Canada. Checking them allows you to review your financial history as reported to lenders. You're looking for errors, an incorrect late payment report, accounts that aren't yours due to identity theft, or incorrect balances.
Mistakes can happen.
Mistakes happen. And you don't want an error dragging down your score. If you find one, you can dispute it. It's your financial reputation. You need to make sure it's accurate.
Okay, circling back to Raj's Oilers debt example, how does paying off that specific credit card debt impact his credit score based on these factors?
That's a perfect illustration. By making the payments on that Visa consistently, even while carrying a balance, he is positively impacting his payment history, that big 35% chunk.
Right.
When he starts aggressively paying down and eventually paying off that balance, he is directly improving his amounts owed credit utilization factor, the 30% chunk. By reducing the balance significantly from potentially being maxed out to much lower or even zero, his utilization ratio drops dramatically. This is a powerful positive signal to lenders and can give his score a significant boost. It's chef's kiss for his credit score. Reducing high-interest credit card debt is one of the fastest ways to improve your credit utilization and consequently your score.
And that improvement isn't just about a number on a report. It ties into the bigger picture, right? The peace of mind and future freedom the source discusses.
Exactly. This is where it all connects. The financial bone is connected to the peace of mind bone, as the source puts it. Getting out of debt isn't just a mathematical exercise. It's about shedding that heavy, emotional, and psychological burden we discussed earlier with Linda's story.
Getting that weight off your chest.
Right. It's about freeing up mental and emotional energy that was consumed by worry and stress. Achieving debt freedom brings a sense of control, security, and immense peace of mind.
And having a stronger financial foundation, being out of debt, and having a better credit score gives you leverage for the future.
Absolutely crucial point. The goal isn't just to be debt-free for its own sake, though that's a fantastic achievement. It's about building a solid platform for your financial future. When you're out of debt and have a good credit score, you regain control over your income. That money that was going to debt payments is now available to build wealth, to save, to invest, to pursue goals. And if you do need to borrow in the future for a truly smart investment opportunity, a well-planned and affordable mortgage, or a necessary purchase like a car, you will qualify for the best possible terms and the lowest possible interest rates.
Which means borrowing costs you less. A lot less, probably.
Precisely. You leverage your good financial health to get the best deal, saving potentially thousands, tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars over the life of major loans, like a mortgage. You move from being controlled by debt to being in a position to potentially use credit wisely, on your terms, for strategic purposes, rather than being beholden to it. Raj's realization at the end of the chapter brings this full circle, that the Oilers' debt cost him interest, held back his credit score, and cost him sleep. The acknowledgement, time to face the music, is the essential first step.
Yeah.
It's sobering to face the beast, but it's the necessary condition for finally defeating it and reclaiming your future income and freedom.
So for you listening right now, this week's mission is clear. It's the crucial first step towards tackling that refrigerator strapped to your back. Create that detailed debt inventory.
Get a piece of paper, a spreadsheet, whatever works for you. List every single debt you owe. Don't leave anything out. Credit cards, lines of credit, student loans, car loans, BNPL plans, loans from friends or family. List them all.
And for each one, make sure you write down the 4 key pieces of information: the debt name, the total balance owed, the minimum monthly payment, and most importantly, the interest rate. Find that number.
Be honest with yourself. No hiding, no downplaying. Just get the facts laid bare. There's no shame or blame in this process. It's purely about gaining clarity and control. This list is your map of the territory you need to navigate.
Next time, we'll take that inventory you've created, look at those interest rates, and start formulating a concrete battle plan using the strategies we've discussed, either the snowball, the avalanche, or perhaps a hybrid approach that works for you. And remember Jordan's point about Raj needing to be honest with Zara about the spending. Bring that same honesty to yourself as you compile this list. Facing this reality can feel heavy, just like it did for the group in the cafe after the initial excitement of finding savings wore off and they turned to the topic of debt. But that sobriety is powerful. It fuels a new determination.
It's about choosing to be proactive rather than letting debt dictate your life. Just focus on completing that list this week. Drag those liabilities, better dressed or not, into the sunlight.
As you compile that list, take a moment to consider the emotional cost associated with each debt, the stress, the guilt, the lost sleep, the arguments maybe. Is the temporary pleasure or perceived necessity of what you borrowed for worth that ongoing price? What might you gain beyond just saving money and improving number by truly becoming debt-free?
And if all debt is a claim on your future income, a tax on your future potential, what future possibilities, what dreams or goals are you sacrificing today for the sake of carrying that debt? Get that list made. Know your enemy, and next time, we'll strategize the attack.